A young nurse bathed a billionaire in a coma. But when he suddenly woke up, something miraculous. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. It was a rainy evening in New York City. The emergency lights of ambulances reflected against the wet streets outside St. Mary's Hospital. Inside the intensive care unit, the halls were silent except for the steady rhythm of ventilators and monitors. A billionaire lay unconscious in a private room, his name whispered across business headlines for decades. But here, stripped of power suits and boardrooms, he was only a fragile man fighting for life. Assigned to his care was a young nurse named Emily. She was 26 years old, with tired eyes that carried both exhaustion and quiet determination. Emily had grown up in a working-class neighborhood in Queens, often juggling two jobs to help her mother and younger brother. Becoming a nurse was not just a career for her. It was her way of honoring the father she lost to illness, a man who taught her that every human being deserves dignity, no matter their wealth or status. Emily pushed the heavy door open and wheeled in a basin of warm water. Steam rose into the cold, sterile air. Every evening, she performed the most intimate duty that many would refuse, bathing the man who the world called untouchable. With careful hands, she dipped the cloth into the water, wrung it out, and began to gently wash his arms, his chest, and his face. His skin, once tanned from golf courses and yacht decks, was pale now. The lines of stress and ambition seemed deeper. He did not look like a titan of finance. He looked like someone's father, someone's brother, someone's son. Emily whispered softly, almost like a lullaby. "You are safe. You are not alone. I will take care of you." She knew he could not hear her, or at least that is what the doctors said. But speaking gave her strength. In the quiet of that room, she treated him not as a billionaire, but as a man in need. Outside the glass window, other staff members passed by, glancing in with smirks or whispers. To them, Emily was wasting her compassion. "Why talk to him? He is gone," one orderly once muttered under his breath. Another sneered, "Even if he wakes, he will never remember who you are." Emily heard them, but she never replied. Her father had once lain in a bed like this, ignored by nurses who thought their time was too precious. She had sworn she would never repeat that cruelty. The warm water cooled as she continued her task. She replaced it with fresh water, repeating the process patiently. Her hands moved with a rhythm that was almost like prayer. The billionaire's chest rose and fell with mechanical assistance. But Emily imagined she was washing away more than dirt. She was washing away arrogance, loneliness, and pain. As she leaned over to rinse the cloth, she caught sight of his face in the dim light. His eyelids fluttered for a moment. Emily froze, heart pounding. Was it her imagination? The monitors still beeped steadily. She shook her head, telling herself not to cling to false hope. But something about the faint movement lingered in her mind. The night deepened, and thunder rolled outside. Emily finished the bath, carefully drying him and changing his gown. She adjusted his blanket and placed the damp towel aside. Before leaving, she rested her hand gently on his. "You are stronger than you know. Keep fighting." Her words hung in the air as she turned off the basin light. For the world outside, he was nothing more than a coma patient, a billionaire frozen between life and death. For Emily, he was proof that even the most powerful needed kindness when stripped of everything else. She did not know that the next time she entered this room, her life would change forever. The morning sun rose over New York City, casting pale light through the tall windows of St. Mary's Hospital. In the intensive care unit, Emily returned for her early shift. She carried fresh supplies in her arms, her shoes squeaking softly against the polished floor. The billionaire patient remained in his bed, motionless, machines keeping steady rhythm for his fragile body. To others, he was a silent figure hidden behind tubes and monitors. But to Emily, he was a man who needed her care as much as any other. She set the supplies on the tray and adjusted the curtains to let in warmth. The sound of distant footsteps echoed down the corridor, reminding her how empty and isolating this floor could feel. Emily approached the bedside and whispered her usual greeting. "Good morning. It is a new day. I am here with you." Her words floated into the quiet room, soft yet firm, as if she could convince him to hear. As she began her routine, Emily checked his vitals and carefully recorded the numbers in longhand. She avoided abbreviations, writing out every detail because precision mattered. Afterward, she replaced the water in the basin, preparing once more for the delicate act of bathing him. The night before, she had seen his eyelids flutter, and the memory lingered in her mind. Was it a reflex, or was it a sign of something deeper? She did not tell the doctors, afraid they would dismiss her observation as wishful thinking. Emily soaked the cloth in warm water and gently ran it across his forehead. "I know you are still fighting," she murmured. "If you can hear me, do not give up. Someone is waiting for you." She did not know who in his vast empire might truly care about him beyond his fortune, but she spoke the words anyway. Voices echoed from the hallway. His relatives had arrived again. Emily heard the sharp click of heels and the murmur of expensive perfumes before the door swung open. A woman entered, elegantly dressed in designer clothing, followed by two men in suits. It was his sister and her entourage. They hardly glanced at Emily before surrounding the bed. "Still no change?" the sister asked in a clipped tone. Emily shook her head. The woman sighed. "He was always stubborn. Even in this state, he refuses to let go." The words stung. Emily lowered her gaze and continued her work, determined not to let their coldness disrupt her duty. One of the suited men leaned close to the sister and whispered, "The nurses seem too sentimental. They treat him as if he is a saint." Emily's hands tightened on the cloth, but she kept her silence. She had long grown used to such dismissive comments. When the visitors left, leaving behind the faint scent of expensive perfume, the room felt heavy with loneliness. Emily resumed bathing him, her movements calm and steady. She remembered her father again, how he once held her hand in his final days, unable to speak but grateful for every touch. That memory fueled her patience now. She spoke softly once more, her voice trembling with emotion. "I believe you can hear me, and I believe you will come back. Not because of money, not because of power, but because every person deserves another chance." "Hi." For a moment, she thought she felt his fingers twitch beneath the towel. Her breath caught in her throat, and she looked quickly at his face. His eyelids quivered again, longer this time, like faint signals trying to break through the silence. The machines beeped steadily, betraying no change, but Emily's heart pounded with hope. She leaned closer, gripping his hand gently. "If you are trying to wake, do not stop. I am here. You are not alone." The sound of rain began again outside the hospital, tapping against the windows like a steady drumbeat. Emily continued her task, unaware that every word she spoke was etching itself into the fragile consciousness of the man who lay between life and death. Somewhere within the haze of his coma, her voice was reaching him, guiding him back toward the light. And though the world outside dismissed her as just a nurse, Emily was about to become the one person whose presence could change his destiny forever. The rain had stopped by the following evening, leaving the streets of New York City shining under the glow of street lamps. Inside St. Mary's Hospital, Emily began her night shift once more. She walked down the quiet hallway with her clipboard pressed to her chest, passing other nurses who barely nodded at her. She had learned to keep her focus, for her patient was waiting. When she entered the billionaire's room, the familiar rhythm of beeping machines greeted her. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic, yet the room felt less cold because she always carried warmth with her presence. Emily set down her supplies, prepared the basin of warm water, and rolled up her sleeves. This ritual had become second nature, but tonight she felt something stirring inside her. She could not forget the way his eyelids had flickered yesterday. The memory clung to her, urging her to believe. She whispered, "I am here again. Another day, another chance. Do not stop fighting." Emily dipped the cloth into the steaming water and began wiping his face with care. As she moved to his arms and chest, she noticed a faint change in his breathing. She froze for a moment, her heart pounding. Was it the machine adjusting, or was it truly him? The monitors continued their steady rhythm, but Emily leaned closer, studying every small movement. The door creaked open suddenly, and a senior doctor stepped inside. He was stern, with silver hair and sharp glasses. "Nurse Emily," he said, scanning the patient chart. Do not let hope cloud your judgment. This man has been unresponsive for weeks. Focus on your tasks, not fantasies. Emily lowered her eyes but replied softly. Doctor, sometimes even a small response matters. I believe he can hear. The doctor gave a dismissive sigh. Belief is not evidence. Remember your place. With that, he left, leaving the door half open. Emily's cheeks flushed with quiet frustration, but she refused to let his words break her resolve. She returned to the bedside, speaking gently once more. Do not listen to them. You are more than a case file. If you can hear me, prove them wrong. As if in answer, his hand shifted slightly under the blanket. Emily gasped and quickly clasped it between hers. The movement was faint, almost imperceptible, yet real. Tears stung her eyes as she whispered, I knew it. You are still here. Her emotions surged, but she remained steady, continuing her routine of bathing him. Each stroke of the cloth felt like a bridge between life and death. She spoke of her day, of the world outside the hospital. She described the rain that had ended, the clear night sky above the city, and how she believed he would see it again. For a brief second, his lips moved as if trying to form a word, though no sound emerged. Emily's breath caught. You are trying. I know you are, she said, her voice trembling with hope. The night deepened, and the corridors grew silent. Emily finished drying him and adjusting his gown, her mind racing with what she had witnessed. She considered telling the doctors, but she feared they would dismiss her again. Instead, she chose to keep her discovery close to her heart. She would be his witness, his companion in this silent struggle. Before leaving the room, she leaned close and whispered, Tomorrow, I will be back. I believe in you, and I will not stop believing. She gently placed her hand on his once more, feeling a faint twitch in his fingers. As she turned off the basin light and stepped into the hallway, Emily carried a secret burning in her chest. The world outside might see only a man trapped in a coma, but she knew the truth. He was fighting his way back, guided by her voice, her care, and her unwavering faith. She walked down the empty corridor with renewed determination, unaware that the next step of his awakening was closer than anyone imagined. The following day, Emily entered the intensive care unit with a sense of urgency in her steps. She had barely slept, her mind replaying the small movements she had witnessed the night before. Every blink of his eyelids, every twitch of his fingers, had become proof to her that he was still reaching for life. As she pushed open the heavy door of his private room, the familiar rhythm of monitors filled her ears. She placed her supplies on the tray and spoke in a calm voice. Good morning. It is Emily. I promised I would return, and I always keep my promises. The billionaire lay as still as ever, but Emily felt a different energy in the room. She prepared the basin of warm water and began her careful routine. The cloth glided over his skin, and she studied him closely, waiting for another sign. When she brushed the towel across his chest, she noticed his breathing quicken ever so slightly. She leaned closer, whispering, If you can hear me, hold on, I am here. Suddenly, the billionaire's lips parted, and a faint sound escaped. It was not a word, more like a weak exhale struggling to form meaning. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She gripped his hand gently. Do not stop, keep trying, you are stronger than you think. The monitors beeped steadily, but Emily's eyes remained locked on his face. Then, in a moment that felt like a miracle, his eyelids lifted. His gaze was unfocused at first, his pupils sluggish, but he was awake. Emily gasped, her knees nearly giving way. You are awake. Oh my God, you are really awake. His lips trembled as he struggled to speak. The first word came out broken, almost inaudible. Water. Emily quickly reached for a small cup of ice chips, carefully placing one against his lips. He accepted it weakly, his throat working to swallow. She whispered encouragement with every motion. Take your time. You are safe. No. For a long moment, he stared at her, his eyes searching her face as if trying to understand where he was and who she might be. Finally, his voice rasped again, no louder than a whisper. Who are you? Emily's throat tightened with emotion. She squeezed his hand gently. My name is Emily. I am your nurse. I have been caring for you while you slept. His gaze softened, though confusion still lingered. His lips formed another question. How? Long? Several weeks, Emily replied, her voice steady but filled with compassion. But none of that matters now. What matters is that you are awake. You are alive. Tears pricked the corners of her eyes as she watched him struggle to take in the reality. She imagined what it must feel like for a man who had commanded boardrooms and corporations, now waking helpless in a hospital bed. She brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered, "You are not alone. I have been here every day." The billionaire blinked slowly, his breathing uneven, but there was a spark of recognition in his expression. He had heard her voice before, not in dreams, but in the fragile state between life and death, where her words had anchored him. Emily leaned closer, her voice trembling. "You came back. I knew you would." As she held his hand, the weight of the moment pressed upon her. The doctors had doubted. His family had mocked her compassion. Yet here he was, alive, breathing, and staring at her as if her presence mattered. Outside the window, the city skyline glowed against the setting Sunday. The world would soon learn that the billionaire had awakened, but Emily knew this moment belonged only to them. She did not know what trials awaited beyond this room, but one truth was undeniable. Her kindness, her persistence, and her voice had brought him back from the edge, and nothing could take that away. Emily stood frozen for a moment, her heart pounding as she watched the billionaire's eyes flutter open wider. His breathing was shallow, his voice raspy, but he was awake. She could hardly believe it. After weeks of silence, after countless nights of bathing him, speaking to him, and never giving up hope, he had finally returned. Emily steadied herself and leaned closer. "You are safe," she whispered. "Do not try to speak too much. Save your strength." "Oh." The billionaire's gaze searched hers with confusion. His lips parted again, this time forming words that carried more strength. "Why? You?" Emily swallowed hard, her emotions rising. "Because it was my duty, and because no matter who you are, every life deserves dignity and care." For a long moment, his eyes stayed fixed on her. Something flickered in his expression, as if her words had reached a place deep within him that wealth and power had never touched. Minutes passed, and Emily pressed the call button to alert the doctors. When the medical team rushed in, their shock was unmistakable. "He is awake," one doctor exclaimed, quickly checking his vitals. Nurses hurried around the room, adjusting monitors and documenting every detail. The senior doctor who had once dismissed Emily's hope looked at her with disbelief, then avoided her gaze entirely. Through the chaos, the billionaire's hand clung weakly to Emily's, as if he feared losing the one anchor he trusted. She remained by his side, even as the doctors examined him. "Do not worry," she whispered again. "I will not leave you." Later that evening, when the room quieted and most of the staff had gone, Emily sat beside his bed. The machine still hummed softly, but the tension in the air had shifted. He was no longer just a body being kept alive by wires and tubes. He was a man who had returned from the edge. "You spoke to me?" he said weakly, his voice breaking. "I remember. Your voice. Always talking." Emily's chest tightened. "Yes, I talked to you every day. I told you about the rain, the city, and how I believed you would return." His lips curved into the faintest shadow of a smile. "You believed." "Yes," she said firmly, tears welling in her eyes. "I never stopped." The billionaire's eyes closed for a moment. But when they opened again, there was something new in them. Vulnerability. Gratitude. A flicker of trust. Emily reached for the basin, dipping the cloth in warm water once more. "Let me help you feel refreshed," she said softly. As she bathed his face and arms, he watched her every motion with quiet awe. He had once commanded armies of staff, people who bowed to his wealth, but never had he been cared for with such sincerity. "Why would you do this?" he asked, his voice hoarse but steady enough to reveal his confusion. "Because," Emily said, pausing to meet his gaze, "even the strongest need someone to care for them. Money cannot change that. Power cannot change that. Humanity is the one thing we all share." The billionaire swallowed with effort, his eyes glistening. For perhaps the first time in years, he felt seen not for his fortune, but for his fragile humanity. Emily finished drying him, adjusting his gown, and tucking the blanket over his chest. She spoke gently, almost like a promise. "You are not alone anymore. As long as I am here, you will never be alone." The room fell into quiet once more, but this time the silence was not heavy. It was filled with the fragile, miraculous bond forming between a billionaire who had nearly lost everything and a nurse who had given him back his life through kindness and faith. As Emily turned off the basin light and settled into the chair beside him, she knew the hardest battles were yet to come. But tonight, as the city lights glimmered outside the hospital window, hope had finally taken root, and it was strong enough to carry them both forward. The news spread quickly through St. Mary's Hospital. By the following morning, the staff was buzzing with disbelief that the billionaire had awakened from his coma. Doctors discussed it in hushed tones in the hallway. Administrators whispered about what this meant for the hospital's reputation. But the one person who carried the greatest weight of the news was Emily. She had been the only one who believed in him, and now he was awake. When Emily arrived for her shift, she noticed stares following her. Some nurses looked at her with a mixture of admiration and envy, while others seemed irritated. The senior doctor who once dismissed her avoided eye contact completely. Emily ignored it all and went directly to the room where her patient rested. The billionaire was sitting up slightly in bed, propped by pillows. His body was still weak, but his eyes were alert now, following her as she entered. "You came back," he rasped, his voice still hoarse. "I promised I would," Emily replied, smiling softly. She adjusted the basin and began preparing fresh water. For a while, she worked in silence, bathing him gently. He watched her, his brow furrowed as if deep in thought. At last he spoke. "My family was here yesterday. I do not remember much, but I know they stood around me, yet I only recall your voice." Emily hesitated, unsure how to respond. Voices of family can sometimes fade when a person is ill. "What matters is that you are here now." He studied her closely. "They do not look at me the way you do. To them, I am a fortune. To you, I am only a man." Emily's hands stilled for a moment. She placed the cloth back into the basin and met his eyes. "Yes, because that is what you are. You are not just wealth. You are not just power. You are a human being who needs compassion." The billionaire let out a weak laugh, though it quickly turned into a cough. "Compassion, a word I forgot, existed in my world." He closed his eyes briefly, then whispered, "Emily, why are you different?" Her throat tightened. She thought of her father, of the nights spent by his bedside in a small clinic, where no one showed kindness. She thought of her mother working 2 jobs, of her brother needing her. "Because I know what it feels like to be overlooked," she said quietly. "I know what it is to feel small in a world that only cares about money. I will not let anyone under my care feel that way." For a long time, he was silent, absorbing her words. Then he opened his eyes again, and there was a new softness in his expression. "You gave me something money could not buy. You gave me dignity." At that moment, the door swung open. His sister entered, flanked by 2 lawyers. Her heels clicked sharply on the tile floor as she strode forward. "Well," she said coolly, "the miracle is true. You are awake." She glanced at Emily with a sneer. "And I see you still have your little nurse here, clinging to your side." "Ugh." Emily felt heat rise in her face, but kept silent. The sister continued. "We have business to discuss, brother. Important matters regarding the company. You cannot waste time on distractions." Her eyes landed on Emily like daggers. The billionaire's weak voice cut through the tension. "She is not a distraction. She is the reason I am alive." The sister's face tightened with disbelief. "Do not be ridiculous. Nurses do their jobs, nothing more." But the billionaire reached for Emily's hand, gripping it with what strength he had. "She gave me back my life when everyone else gave up." His voice was firm despite his weakness. "She stays." The sister bristled, exchanging glances with the lawyers, but said nothing further. She turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving the room in heavy silence. Emily's chest ached with both fear and gratitude. She looked at him, whispering, "You did not have to defend me." Yes I did," he replied softly. "Because you defended me when I could not defend myself." Emily blinked back tears as she resumed bathing his hands. Outside the window, the city moved with its usual rush. But inside this room, something profound was happening. Trust was taking root, stronger than wealth, deeper than status. And neither of them realized yet how much the world would try to tear it apart. The days that followed were a whirlwind. News outlets began to circulate whispers that the billionaire, once declared nearly beyond recovery, had awakened. Reporters gathered outside St. Mary's Hospital, eager for a glimpse or a statement. Inside, administrators pressed the medical team for updates, already sensing the publicity value of a miracle recovery. Emily stayed by his side through it all. Each day, she bathed him, helped him sit upright for therapy, and encouraged him to speak in longer sentences. His strength grew slowly, but with every passing hour he seemed more determined to reclaim not only his body but also his voice. One evening, the hospital announced that he would make his first public appearance since waking. Cameras were set up in the main hall, journalists filled the space, and even shareholders from his company gathered. Emily did not expect to be there, but he insisted. "I want you with me," he said, his hand trembling as it reached for hers. "The world needs to know the truth." When the press conference began, flashes of cameras lit the hall. The billionaire, still frail but standing with support, looked out at the sea of faces. His sister stood nearby, clearly expecting him to follow her lead. But his eyes searched for Emily. And when he found her in the crowd, he drew strength from her presence. He spoke slowly, his voice rough but resolute. "I stand before you today, not because of wealth, not because of power, and not because of medicine alone. I stand here because of compassion. While I lay in silence, it was a nurse who stayed by my side. She bathed me. She spoke to me. She believed in me when everyone else had given up." The room shifted with murmurs. His sister's face paled with shock, and the executives exchanged uneasy glances. But the billionaire continued, his voice gaining force. "This nurse Emily gave me back my dignity when I had none. Without her, I would not be alive today. And for that, she will always have my respect and my protection." Emily's breath caught as the cameras turned toward her. The whispers grew louder, and for the first time, the world's eyes were on her. She had not sought recognition, only to fulfill her duty. Yet now, the man she had cared for was lifting her above the voices that once dismissed her. In that moment, lines of power shifted. No longer was Emily the invisible nurse working night shifts in silence. She was the woman whose kindness had awakened a billionaire, and the world would never see her the same way again. The press conference became the turning point. In the days that followed, headlines filled newspapers and television broadcasts. Billionaire credits nurse for saving his life. Some praised the story as miraculous, while others sneered, questioning Emily's motives. Was she truly selfless, or was she seeking influence? Rumors spread quickly, and Emily found herself under scrutiny she had never asked for. Inside the hospital, the whispers grew sharper. Some staff admired her, but others looked at her with suspicion. "She is clever," one nurse muttered. "Clinging to him like that will guarantee her a fortune." Emily heard the cruel words but kept her head high. She knew the truth, and so did he. The billionaire, still regaining strength, insisted on protecting her. He met with the hospital board and announced that he would establish a new foundation in honor of frontline caregivers, beginning with nurses who gave their lives to dignity and compassion. "They are the true backbone of healing," he declared, "and they deserve respect that goes beyond a paycheck." His words carried power, and the board had no choice but to agree. Emily stood at his side as he signed the documents, her heart heavy with emotion. For years, she had worked long shifts with little recognition, watching her colleagues suffer in silence. Now, because of him, voices like hers were finally being heard. But not everyone celebrated. His sister confronted him privately, her tone sharp. "You are letting sentiment cloud your mind. This nurse is nothing more than a distraction. Do not let her ruin everything you built." "Alba." The billionaire met her gaze with calm strength. "She did not ruin me. She saved me. And if you cannot see that, then perhaps it is not me who has lost perspective." His sister left in anger, her threats echoing in the corridor, but Emily remained by his side. He turned to her, his voice quieter now. "They will keep trying to tear you down, but I will not let them." Emily swallowed her fear and whispered, "I did not ask for any of this. I only wanted to do my job." And yet you did more than that," he said, his hand reaching weakly for hers. You gave me back my humanity." Her chest tightened with emotion as she held his hand gently. Outside the hospital, the noise of the city continued. But inside this room, justice had begun to bloom. Emily was no longer the invisible nurse. She was the proof that kindness could topple pride, and that dignity mattered more than money. And soon, the world would see that love had the power to stand against every whisper, every doubt, and every barrier of class. The weeks that followed were filled with steady recovery. The billionaire regained strength each day, walking short distances with assistance, speaking more clearly, and showing a side of himself that few had ever seen. He was no longer the untouchable figure who once ruled from glass towers and boardrooms. He was a man humbled by weakness and transformed by kindness. Emily remained by his side, caring for him with the same patience she had shown when he lay silent. She never sought attention, never demanded gratitude, yet he noticed every detail. The way she adjusted his blanket without being asked, the way she whispered encouragement when pain clouded his face, the way she treated him not as a symbol of wealth, but as a human being who mattered. One evening, as the sun set beyond the city skyline, he asked her to sit by his bed. His voice was steady now, though still soft. "Emily, I owe you my life, but I also owe you something greater. You reminded me what it means to be human." She shook her head gently. "You do not owe me anything. I only did my duty." "No," he insisted, his eyes never leaving hers. "You did far more than duty. You gave me back my dignity when I had none. And you showed me a love that is not bought or bargained. That is priceless." Emily's throat tightened, tears brimming in her eyes. She had never imagined her small acts of care could change the heart of a man who once had everything. Then, with deliberate effort, he reached under his pillow and pulled out a folded hospital gown. "Do you remember this?" he asked. Emily nodded, confused. "Yes, it was one of the gowns I changed for you during your baths." He placed it in her hands. "I kept it because it carries the memory of every word you spoke to me, every moment you refused to give up. To others, it is just fabric. To me, it is proof that I was not alone." Emily pressed the gown to her chest, overwhelmed. He continued, his voice breaking with emotion. "I do not want to return to my old life, where power and pride blinded me. I want a life built on truth, and I want you in that life, not as a nurse, but as the woman who saved me." Tears fell freely down Emily's cheeks as she whispered, "Are you certain? The world will not understand." He reached for her hand, his grip stronger now. "Let them judge. Love is not about status. Love is about authenticity, and I would rather live with truth at my side than wealth without meaning." In that quiet hospital room, surrounded by the hum of machines and the fading glow of daylight, Emily leaned into his embrace. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in a future beyond duty, a future built on love. Their story had begun with silence, with doubt, with whispers of impossibility. But it ended with justice, dignity, and a promise stronger than wealth. The billionaire who had once been untouchable was now a man reborn, and the nurse who had once been invisible was now the woman he held above all others. Together, they had proven that true love does not bow to money or class. It is born in kindness, forged in truth, and sealed in action. And from that day forward, their lives were no longer separate. They were bound together by the miracle of awakening and the unshakable power of love.